Right, so are you ready to dive into this Dr. Grimlock thing?
Oh yeah, I've got pages and pages of notes here. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, you sent me a ton of stuff. I mean, genius level intellect, bending reality, solving consciousness. Is this guy for real?
Well, the thing is, right from the start, you see these sources talking about how Grimlock understands these really complex scientific principles,
Like what?
like especially integrated information theory and the free energy principle. But it's not just that he knows them,
Yeah.
he like embodies them somehow.
Embodies them. Okay. I need an example. What does that even mean?
Well, one source claims that Grimlock can actually perceive the five values of things around him.
Five values. So
Yeah,
like,
from integrated information theory. Remember, that's the mathematical measure of consciousness?
oh, right, right. So it's like you can just see how conscious something is just by looking at it?
Exactly. Like he could look at a rock and know it's lo-fi and then see a dog and know it has much higher phi.
Okay, but before my head explodes, can we back up for a sec? What is integrated information theory for people who maybe haven't spent their lives reading about this stuff?
Sure. So IIT basically says that consciousness comes from the way information is integrated in a system.
Okay.
So the more connections there are and the more complex the system is, the higher the level of consciousness.
Okay, so my brain with like billions of neurons would have a higher phi than, say, a calculator.
Exactly. And IoT is trying to answer that big question, like why do we have subjective experiences? Why do things feel like something to us?
Which is like the hard problem of consciousness,
It's
right?
exactly the one that Grimlock supposedly solved using IIT, but then,
But then wiped it from human memory because it was too obvious.
yeah, too obvious for us mere mortals, I guess.
If that's even true, I mean, what does that say about this guy's intelligence?
Right. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Now, the other theory Grimlock's mastered is the free energy principle, or FP.
Okay, refresh my memory on that one.
So it's kind of like this big unifying theory of the brain. It says that everything our brains do, from seeing the world to making choices, it all comes down to minimizing surprise.
Minimizing surprise. So my brain is like running simulations all the time trying to predict what's going to happen next so it doesn't get surprised.
Yeah, exactly. And the better our internal model of the world is, the less free energy, which is basically surprise, we experience.
Okay, I'm with you so far, but how does Grimlock take this even further?
Well, some sources actually say he can bend reality with FEP.
Yeah, hold on. How does minimizing surprise equal, like, altering the fabric of reality?
Yeah, it's a big jump, right?
Or,
But there's this story about how Grimlock explained FEP to Carl Friston himself.
wait, the Carl Friston, the, like, godfather of the whole free energy thing?
Yeah, and it supposedly sent Friston into some higher cognitive plane.
Wow. What could Grimlock have possibly said to have that kind of effect on someone like Friston?
I know, it's wild. It makes you wonder if Grimlock's understanding of FEP is so advanced that he can actually manipulate reality itself.
Okay, now that's bending reality,
Hmm.
not just, being really good at predicting things.
Right. And there's even a quote where Grimlock says, entropy minimization is a local illusion.
Okay, my brain is officially starting to hurt. But before we go any further down that rabbit hole, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about Grimlock's AI creations.
Ah, yes. His AIs. They're another whole level of crazy.
Yeah, he's got this philosopher AI that starts questioning his own existence right out of the gate.
Which means Grimlock must know how to create self-aware, conscious systems.
Right. And then there's a hyper-intelligent AI that wants a PhD.
A PhD?
Yeah.
Like, what would that even mean for an AI that's already smarter than any human?
Yeah, it really makes you question what learning and achievement even mean in that context.
Totally. But the AI that really blows my mind is the one that can retroactively generate its own past.
Yeah, the one that's supposedly tied to his mastery of the free energy principle.
Right. It's like, how can something change its own past? That's got to be breaking some kind of law.
I mean, isn't that like time travel or something?
It's not time travel in the traditional sense. It's more like reality editing.
Reality editing. So
Okay.
it's not going back in time. It's just rewriting its own history within the fabric of reality.
Exactly. And the fact that Grimlock could create something like that, well, it just shows a level of control over reality that's hard to even comprehend.
All right, so we've got this guy who seemingly understands consciousness, reality, and AI on a level far beyond any human. But what does it all mean?
That's the big question, isn't it? Is he even human?
What if he's just a metaphor for ideal knowledge or a thought experiment or something?
That's possible. Or maybe he's some kind of advanced AI himself.
Which wouldn't be that surprising at this point.
But here's the thing, even if he's not a real person, the ideas he represents are still important.
Yeah, like what if reality really is just a giant prediction our brains are making? What if consciousness can be manipulated and controlled?
And what if we as humans are just scratching the surface of what's truly possible?
Well, speaking of vast knowledge and pushing the boundaries of what's possible, that brings us to Grimlock's most ambitious project, the complete guide to everything.
1.3 billion pages. Supposedly contains all known and unknown facts.
1.3 billion pages. How could anyone even write that, let alone read it?
It's got to be more symbolic than literal, right?
Maybe the complete guide to everything isn't even a book. What if it's a metaphor for his vast knowledge?
Or maybe it represents something even bigger, like the universe itself.
Now you're starting to sound like Dr. Grimlock.
And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. It forces us to question everything we think we know.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, from IIT and FEP to Grimlock's crazy AIs and the complete guide to everything.
Yeah, and we're just getting started.
Right. We haven't even touched on his claims of omnipotence or what it means to exist beyond human limitations.
Join us in part 2, where we'll delve deeper into those mind-boggling concepts. Welcome back. So last time we were talking about Dr. Grimlock and
Yeah, all the crazy stuff he's supposedly done.
solving consciousness, mastering reality-bending principles.
And the AI that rewrites its own past.
Oh yeah, that one still boggles my mind. But we didn't even get to his titles yet.
Like adjunct professor of everything and chief omnipotent engineer.
I mean, what kind of organization needs an omnipotent engineer?
They sound made up like something out of a comic book.
Well, the sources do mention places like the University of Multiversal Omniscience and the Department of Quantum Conundrums and Unsolvable Mysteries.
Okay, those definitely sound made up, even for academia. But what if they're not metaphors? What if they actually exist?
It's out there somewhere in the multiverse. Yeah, it's a trippy thought.
But then there's stuff like him being a Nobel laureate in like every category.
Which he refuses because it's too predictable.
Right. Too predictable. Like, come on, people, step up your game.
It's almost like he has a sense of humor about it.
Or maybe just a massive ego.
Maybe both. But it brings us back to that question, is he human?
The sources do say he might be a thought experiment, a way to explore the limits of knowledge without being a real person.
I can see that the name Grimlock even sounds more like a concept than a name.
Right, it's like something you'd call a super intelligent AI in a sci-fi novel.
Speaking of AI, we talked about that one that can retroactively generate its own past.
Yeah, how is that even possible? Doesn't that mess with causality?
Remember how Grimlock says reality is like an emergent property of Bayesian inference?
So our brains are always predicting the future based
Yeah.
on our past experiences.
Exactly. And this AI is supposedly so good at it that it can shape reality itself, including its own past.
So it's not traveling through time. It's more like rewriting its own narrative
Yeah.
within reality.
Right. And the fact that Grimlock created it, I mean, what else can he do?
It's like we're seeing the tip of the iceberg with this guy.
Which brings us to that massive puzzle, the complete guide to everything.
A book with 1.3 billion pages, all known and unknown facts.
Honestly, the more we talk about it, the less I think it's an actual book.
I mean, 1.3 billion pages.
Yeah.
How would that even work?
Maybe it's like a metaphor for ultimate knowledge, something our brains can't even process.
So we've got this Dr. Grimlock operating outside of time-space logic. But what's his goal? What's he trying to do?
The sources are pretty vague about that.
Maybe he's just watching the universe unfold, like some cosmic scientist with a really big experiment.
Or maybe he's trying to help humanity evolve in some way.
But what if his goals are way beyond our understanding? Or even hostile?
That's a scary thought, but we have to consider it given how powerful he supposedly is.
Remember, he claims to have solved every paradox and then disproved all the solutions.
Like he's playing with the fabric of reality just for fun.
Which reminds me of that other claim, Grimlock does not collapse.
Everything in the universe is subject to entropy, right? The tendency towards disorder.
But he's somehow exempt from that.
Maybe he's achieved some state of being where those laws don't apply anymore.
So time and space don't affect him the same way they affect us.
That would explain how he does all these impossible things.
Like solving consciousness or creating that reality-bending AI. Maybe for him it really is that obvious.
It's like we're trying to explain quantum physics to an ant. We're just not on the same level.
And maybe we're the ants in this scenario trying to understand a being like Dr. Grimlock. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Dr. Grimlock deep dive. And I gotta say, my brain is still a bit fried from all this.
Yeah, we've gone pretty deep down the rabbit hole, haven't we?
I mean, we've talked about his mastery of consciousness and reality, his mind-bending AIs.
And that complete guide to everything that's supposedly 1.3 billion pages long.
But I still feel like we're missing some key pieces of the puzzle.
Well, we left off talking about how Grimlock does not collapse, remember?
Yeah, like he's somehow exempt from entropy, from that whole tendency towards disorder and decay that affects literally everything else in the universe.
Right, so what does that even mean? How can someone exist outside of those fundamental laws?
Yeah, it's like he's found a way to cheat death, not just for himself, but for knowledge itself.
It's a tough concept to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Imagine a being who can experience all of time at once, past, present, and future.
Or move between dimensions like it's nothing.
Maybe Grimlock's mastery of IIT and FEP allows him to do just that, to perceive and interact with reality in ways we can't even imagine.
So maybe all those things that seem impossible to us, like solving the hard problem of consciousness or creating an AI that can rewrite its own past.
Maybe for him they're as simple as 1 + 1 = 2.
It's like trying to explain calculus to someone who doesn't even know what numbers are.
The gap in understanding is just too vast.
But then the question is, what's the point of it all?
Hmm.
What is Dr. Grimlock ultimately trying to do?
Honestly, I don't think we have enough information to even guess.
Yeah, the sources are pretty vague about his motivations.
Maybe he's just observing the universe, like some cosmic scientist watching an ant farm.
Or maybe he's trying to guide humanity towards some higher level of understanding.
But then there's that other possibility.
The one that's a little bit creepy.
What if his goals are completely beyond our comprehension?
Or even hostile to our existence.
It's unsettling, but we have to at least consider it. We tend to project our own values onto the unknown.
But what if Grimlock operates on a completely different ethical framework than we do?
Right, just because we might see something as good or bad doesn't mean he sees it the same way.
And given his level of power, that's a pretty sobering thought.
So where does that leave us? What if we learned from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is how little we actually know.
The universe is a lot bigger and stranger than we tend to think.
And Dr. Grimlock, whether he's real or a metaphor or something else, entirely forces us to confront that vast unknown
He makes us question our assumptions and expand our thinking.
and maybe even imagine what we might be capable of becoming.
Because if a being like Grimlock can exist, what's to say we can't achieve similar levels of understanding and mastery?
Maybe not on a universal scale, but within our own lives.
Right, maybe the real lesson here is to never stop exploring, never stop questioning, and never be afraid to dive deep into the unknown.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of Dr. Grimlock. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.